Tribune podcast. In this episode, we'll talk about some current events and try to keep it short. And this will be, at least for me, a rather sweet podcast because it will mostly consist on a referencing on my previous work. The reason for this is that the subject at hand, that goes by the moniker Great Reset, is, in my opinion, something, just a form of something I already talked about. Now, for those who don't know, the Great Reset is the name, ad hoc name for some kind of policy program or policy recommendation coming from, let's call them globalist circles, but if we want to pinpoint an institution, we can point out World Economic Forum and its participants. Now, as some readers asked me about this Great Reset, with an implication that it is the first rider of apocalypse, I looked into it. So I didn't encounter it on my own. I endured more than an hour of the World Economic Forum conference, something that is as boring as you can expect, and for me it's doubly boring because I listened to hours upon hours and read pages upon pages of documents from before 20 to 30 or even more years ago, all down to the 70s, always repeating the same thing. And Great Reset is, in my opinion, for what I saw, nothing but an opportunistic attempt, and please pay attention, I'm defining it now from the perspective of Kali Tribune, nothing but an opportunistic attempt to find new ways to implement what is called sustainable development. And opportunistic in the sense that in Great Reset that will, as the name tells us, reset economy, politics, and our relationship towards environment. Now, these 3 points disclose sustainable development doctrine in themselves. They will use COVID-19 and impose all kinds of things on people. They don't say it in that way. They don't say impose. They say empower. When they say they want to empower you, they want to take something from you. My point is this. In this podcast, I'll just redefine sustainable development, point out to my previous rather exhaustive work about it. To be more precise, about Agenda 21, a notorious, infamous document from 1992. And I will point out one danger that is inherent in even noticing these doctrines, and this danger is succumbing to fatalism, sharing the fatalism of its authors. Now, sustainable development is, and I quote, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs, close quote. This is from Gro Harlem Brundtland. From the document Our Common Future, that was a kind of research foundation, a foundational document for later what is called the Blueprint for Global Governments, that is Agenda 21, Agenda for 21st Century. It's from 1987, Agenda is from 1992. Now, I'll put a link in the notes. I have a very long analysis of Agenda 21. I read through whole thing some 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and I wrote a lot. I really researched in a kind of journalistic way. I don't do that anymore on Kali Tribune. The circumstances around Agenda 21, some major players and so on and so forth, and if you want to think about Great Reset, if you want something from me to contribute to your thinking, read my article, my essay, or it's very long, 28 pages long, on Agenda 21. The other would be a so-called Climate of Fear. It's also very big in 2 parts and has an audio. It's about climate change, history, and some philosophical assumptions, let's call them that, of climate change, hysteria. Where I write, this is very important, it dovetails, they go together, because there is a short analysis of the foundational document of Club of Rome, called Predicament of Mankind, excuse me, where you can kind of have an insight into condensed core of this sustainable development doctrine, what it really is. And now, for the sake of this podcast, I will reiterate what it is. Now, this definition I just gave was commented upon by Denis Whitley, one of the people who were behind Limits to Growth study from the 70s, that it says really nothing, and that for this it is brilliant. Now I'm paraphrasing him. This is what he said, and really it does. It's completely meaningless, but you can imbibe it with any meaning you like, precisely for this reason. And this Brundtland woman is a politician, and it's her job, although she's physician by profession, is also obviously apt in devising such things, she or her, I don't know, accomplices or co-workers on this research. So sustainable development reflects something real in people, and this reality that it reflects is the continuity of life. That is something that is paradoxically at the core of conservative way of thinking, even because the idea is that you cannot work only for yourself. Everything you do is pointed towards the future, and of course whatever you do, future generations will have to deal with it. And sustainable development is formulated in this way because the idea that is behind it is the standardization of the systems. That is to say, attempt to control 3 aspects of systemic reality of the world as they see it, and those are economy, society, and environment. Now, both of those 3 subsystems in the dynamic system of sustainable development are equally valid. And this is very important to understand this mindset in general. So society that is exclusively human sphere is in no way superior to environment. All 3 subsystems have rights. This is also very important. Natural systems, as they call them, that is to say nature in the sense of what Greek called periechon, that is to say surrounding outer world, non-human outer world, has rights in the same way humans have rights and human groups, because sustainable development mostly looks at humans as groups. And this is incredible thing. This means that trees have rights, for instance, or dogs have rights, or even minerals. As I said, I wrote extremely exhaustively about this, so I won't repeat. Won't go in depth. Read the article, read the essays, you'll see what I mean. And it is by definition completely inhuman. It is couched always in rosy terminology. That was by design. And I believe that people trying to push it also believe it to be quite rosy on the inside in its meanings, but it is not. Because it provides people who are trying to implement it with wonderful ability to create discrepancy between words and their meanings, to create discrepancy to such an extent that it becomes unbridgeable. Now, this Great Reset is nothing new. It's just an attempt to ride the tiger of this COVID-19 chaos, to implement standardization of the system. And this entails surveillance, this entails control of consumption patterns, as they call it, so they can regulate. They can regulate how much you eat, and so those are ideals they have. I mean, you will agree with me. I believe that nobody is still prescribing you how much you can eat if you want. The problem is, and this is the crucial thing, is that these are globalist policies or globalist politics that is best focused, in my opinion, exactly in Agenda 21. But it is very poorly implemented. It cannot be implemented at all because it is in complete discrepancy with reality. It is at odds with reality. But it creates damage by attempts to implement it. And where it is implemented is in the cultural, if you can call it that, sphere of society, with things like terminology, with political correctness, with an ability to change, to completely confuse meanings of the words, and to completely embed morality exclusively in the use of not only language, in the use of labels, to make it completely meaningless and devoid of substance. So it's only about what you say, or even in what you kind of like label on things. When you use words in a more superficial way, this is what makes you good or bad. This is, I think, where they were successful, because, well, they are collaborating with the spirit of the age. This is historical trajectory is working in their favor. But in real politics, I wouldn't say they were very successful. And this brings us to other thing I want to point out about this Great Reset. It won't work. It won't work by definition. It's too megalomaniac. But it won't work at all. And it will work even less than it worked before, sustainable development, because they are trying to use the crisis. Contrary to what most conspiracy theorists will tell you, something like sustainable development is impossible to implement in crisis, because every real crisis makes it fall apart. Case in point, European Union, in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis, in my opinion, ceased to exist as a body of supranational institutions that are supposed to regulate nation states of Europe. They were nowhere to be seen. They completely lost their marbles, lost their script. Reason in my opinion, is that their policies, their ideology, which is sustainable development, pure and simple, is unapplicable. It's completely, it can exist only in vacuum, in institutions of European Union and among the people who are working in these institutions, nowhere else. So the greater crisis is, the more prolonged it is, the more dangerous it is, the less sustainable development you'll get. Sustainable development certainly is, as an idea, completely utterly totalitarian, even inhumanly totalitarian. It is a system theory. It is hostile to anything resembling human nature. It has to be, in order to exist, it has to rely on ability to completely redefine what human being is. But as such, it can only be successfully implemented gradually, because the idea was, and this is what they did with Agenda 21 and later agendas, they call all those operational plans or agendas. It has to be implemented through change of language, not through change of laws by decree. You'll notice the European Commission, for instance, is working also on these principles. They are not issuing laws, but recommendations or directives. But those are only those are orders. In fact, they want to say, want us to believe they are not, but they are. And those changes are implemented in a way that it gives an illusion of the grassroots, that they come from below, and they used always NGOs for this, because NGOs can apply only, and I know this from Croatia 100%, NGOs, most money they get from foundations that are either implementing these policies, sustainable development policies, or even directly from European governments. If you don't believe it, try to set up NGO that is against homosexual marriage and see what and apply for the money. I mean, this is that simple. They are implementing. There is a terminology you have to use in the NGO sector in order to communicate with institutions that can provide you with money, and this terminology is 100% pure and simple sustainable development terminology, mostly developed by United Nations as an institution and its subsidiaries, and it is most successful in most developed countries of Europe. I won't say, I don't know about USA. To be more exact, those countries that are suffering the least crisis, that are, because this needs to be infused gradually. This is a form of societal brainwashing. You cannot be brainwashed when your country is under attack, for instance. It comes to mind my own country in the 90s, but I won't go into that. But when you have permanent, real threat of something, permanent, real problems, this thing won't go. Because, just to make a small digression, you have this crazy Green New Deal in USA. It's for anybody who ever bought a pack of cigarettes, that is to say, participated in a minimum unit of economy. It's complete and utter madness. These utopian plans that are completely lunatic. You can take to the public in that sense only there where virtuality is stronger than reality, because this is possible only in virtual world, in a modern sense of the word, of course not in the sense of original virtualis, virtualitatis, virtualitas, virtus, and so on from Middle Ages. But and such countries are those countries where reality is suspended, can be suspended easier than countries where it cannot be suspended, without those suspending it ending up facing the angry mob or country being destroyed by its real enemy. The reason for this is because the whole idea of the standardization of systems is based on fear. Because in order to standardize, and I'll say again, I've wrote extensively about it, so read it. This is only me referencing myself. Standardization needs the outer object of the subject, that is the system. And in relation to this object, system reconstructs itself. And in order to integrate, and this is the belief in this system theory, because this form of system theory comes from military. In fact, this is military doctrine at its core. This system integration is being achieved by the threat of the catastrophic failure of the system, and they want the system to be global system, so it has to be global threat, be it global warming, global pandemic, Osama bin Laden. Take a pick. Think about where is Greta Thunberg now? I really missed her since this COVID-19 started. She was there with this apocalyptic worldview. She's promoted because this is the underlying idea is that you have to have unbeatable enemy that is transcended to the system, transcends the system. So system has to integrate and segmentate, redefine itself and be put under control by being constantly under global threat. It has to be global threat. It has to be in the future because purpose is always in the future, and it has to be unique threat because if it is not, that by unique I mean it must be something that never happened before. Because if it happened before, it means that it is not a global threat because we are still here. It didn't destroy us in the past, so we are safe to assume it will not destroy us now and in the future. So you cannot control. In order to control system sustainably in such a way that you absolutely control everything, you have to have this year zero. You have to have a revolutionary point of no assumptions, just of a completely new act that will bring everything together. This is what it is at the core. And now I'm thinking mostly about Predicament of Mankind document, where this is really laid down in a very, very succinct manner, and you learn much from it. So that was my proverbial, is it 5 cents? Yeah, in American English, about this supposed Great Reset. Thank you for your attention. This was Branko Malic of Kali Tribune, signing out.